They stood beside the most powerful men in Nazi Germany, living lives of fame and comfort. But soon, the world saw the truth behind their perfect smiles. There was blind devotion. Their husbands shaped history with terror. And these women paid the price. The way their lives ended after the war is almost too painful to imagine. By April 1945, Berlin was falling apart. Buildings were burning, bombs were dropping, and the Nazi Empire was collapsing fast. The city that once stood for power and fear was now just ruins and smoke. Deep underground in a concrete bunker beneath the city, the last leaders of Nazi Germany were trapped. Around them, soldiers were running, families were hiding, and the Soviet army was getting closer every minute. Inside that bunker were not just generals and politicians, but also their wives. One of them was Eva Braun, born on February 7, 1912 in Munich, Germany. Eva came from a normal middle-class family. Her father was a school teacher, and her mother stayed at home. Eva was lively, cheerful, and loved fashion and photography. She never imagined that her life would one day be tied to one of history's most infamous men. When she was 17, she worked in a small photo shop owned by Heinrich Hoffmann, who happened to be Adolf Hitler's personal photographer. One day in 1929, Hitler walked into that same shop. Eva was behind the counter, not knowing who he really was. Their first meeting was simple but brief, but it changed her life forever. Hitler was 40 at that time, more than twice her age. He was already rising in power, giving fiery speeches across Germany. Eva was young, curious, and easily impressed. Soon, he started visiting the shop more often, and she became part of his private world. She was never allowed to appear in public with him. Most Germans didn't even know she existed. Hitler thought that having a wife or girlfriend would make him seem weak, so Eva had to stay hidden from the public eye. Even though she lived in secrecy, she stayed loyal to him. She spent years at his mountain home, the Berghof, where top Nazi leaders visited. She took photographs, watched movies, and hosted small gatherings. Still, she often felt lonely. While others around Hitler had power, she had none. She was only a woman behind the scenes. When World War II began in 1939, her quiet life started falling apart. Hitler's dream of conquering Europe turned into destruction. German cities were bombed, soldiers were dying, and people were starving. But Eva refused to leave him. She believed it was her duty to stand by his side no matter what happened. By early 1945, when Germany's defeat was certain, Eva joined Hitler in the underground bunker in Berlin. Above them, the city was being destroyed by Soviet artillery. Explosions shook the ground every hour. Food was running out. The people inside the bunker knew it was the end. Still, Hitler refused to surrender. He believed that somehow a last-minute victory might save them. Eva knew it was over. She was only 33, but she had already decided that if Hitler died, she would die with him. She told others that she didn't want to live in a world without him. Despite the chaos, she remained calm and loyal. On April 28, 1945, with the Red Army just streets away, Hitler finally agreed to marry her. The wedding took place in a small room inside the bunker. There was no music, no flowers, no crowd, just a handful of witnesses. Eva wore a simple blue dress, and Hitler gave her a modest gold ring. After the ceremony, they shared a quiet meal together. It was meant to be a celebration, but everyone there knew it was really a farewell. 2 days later, on April 30th, 1945, they made their final decision. Eva took a capsule of cyanide, and Hitler shot himself soon after. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, bunker staff found them lying side by side on the sofa in Hitler's private room. Their hands were joined, as if they were at peace for the first time. Following Hitler's orders, the bodies were carried up to the garden above the bunker. They were placed in a small crater, poured with gasoline, and set on fire as Soviet soldiers closed in on the area. By nightfall, Berlin had fallen. Eva's story ended there, but inside that same bunker, another woman was about to make a choice even more shocking. Magda Goebbels was one of the most well-known women in Nazi Germany. Born in Berlin on November 11, 1901, she grew up in a comfortable middle-class family. As a young woman, she was charming, elegant, and intelligent. People admired her for her beauty and calm personality. But underneath that calmness, she carried strong beliefs about Germany's future, beliefs that would eventually destroy her entire family. Before she met Joseph Goebbels, she had lived a normal life. She studied in Switzerland for a while, married a wealthy businessman named Günther Quandt, and had one son with him. But the marriage didn't last long. After their divorce, she became involved with politics and joined groups that supported Adolf Hitler. When she met Joseph Goebbels in the late 1920s, she quickly fell for him and for the political world around him. Goebbels was already close to Hitler, working as his propaganda minister, the man responsible for controlling what Germans heard, read, and saw. He was known for his fiery speeches and ruthless loyalty to Hitler. In December 1931, Magda married him in a grand ceremony in Berlin, and Hitler himself stood as a witness at their wedding. From that day on, the Goebbels family was seen as the perfect Nazi couple, loyal, powerful, and admired by many. Over the years, they had 6 children: Helga, Hilda, Helmut, Hodin, Hedda, and Haida. Magda often appeared with them in public. Photographs of their smiling faces were published in magazines and newspapers across Germany. People saw them as the ideal German family, blonde, well-dressed, and disciplined. But behind the photos, their home life was far from perfect. Joseph Goebbels had many affairs, which caused painful fights between him and Magda. Several times she considered leaving him, but Hitler personally intervened and convinced her to stay for the sake of appearances. Despite her husband's behavior, Magda remained completely devoted to Hitler. She truly believed he was Germany's savior, and that his vision of a pure, powerful nation would last forever. By 1945, everything she believed in began to collapse. The Allied forces were closing in from all sides, and Berlin was under constant attack. When Hitler moved into the underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, the Goebbels family followed. Magda and her 6 children lived in small, cramped rooms. Food was scarce, and the sounds of explosions never stopped. Still, Magda refused to leave. She wanted to stay near Hitler until the very end. When Hitler and Eva Braun ended their lives, Magda completely broke down. She couldn't accept that the Nazi dream was over. She told those around her that her children could not grow up in a world without National Socialism. In her mind, their deaths would be peaceful compared to the shame of living under defeat. That night, she made the most horrifying choice a mother could ever make. With the help of Hitler's personal doctor, Ludwig Stumpfegger, she prepared her children for bed. She gave them sleeping medicine to make sure they wouldn't wake up. One by one, she placed cyanide capsules in their mouths while they slept. The children died quietly in their bunk beds, still dressed in their nightclothes. The oldest, Helga, was 12 years old. It's believed she may have struggled, but she couldn't stop what was happening. The youngest, little Haida, was only 4. The entire bunker went silent afterward. Even hardened Nazi officers were shaken by what they saw. The next evening, May 1st, Magda and her husband walked together into the garden above the bunker. Around 8 p.m., they took cyanide capsules and died side by side. Joseph's bodyguards poured gasoline on their bodies and set them on fire, following the same ritual that had been done for Hitler and Eva Braun. When Soviet soldiers entered the area the next morning, they found the charred remains of the Goebbels couple near the bunker exit. But while Magda and Eva chose death in the bunker, some Nazi wives had already lost everything long before the war ended. One of them was Lena Heydrich. Lina von Osten was born on June 14, 1911, on the small German island of Fehmarn in the Baltic Sea. She came from a conservative family, proud of their military background. Her father was a naval officer, and she grew up believing in strict discipline, duty, and loyalty to Germany. Like many young people in the 1920s, she was deeply influenced by the country's struggles after World War I, and dreamed of a strong nation rising again. In 1930, Lina met a young naval officer named Reinhard Heydrich at a party. He was tall, serious, and confident, and she quickly fell in love with him. They married the next year in 1931, but soon after, Heydrich was dismissed from the Navy due to conduct unbecoming an officer. That could have ruined his life, but it didn't. Lina encouraged him to join the growing Nazi Party, believing it would give him a new purpose. That decision changed both of their lives forever. Heydrich joined the SS, led by Heinrich Himmler, and quickly rose through the ranks. He was brilliant, ambitious, and completely loyal to Hitler. Over the next few years, he became head of the Reich Main Security Office, the organization that controlled the Gestapo and intelligence operations. He played a key role in planning the Holocaust and the systematic persecution of Jews and other groups across Europe. Many called him the Butcher of Prague, or the man with the iron heart. While her husband was feared across Europe, Lina lived a very different life. She stayed in beautiful houses, attended official dinners, and hosted parties for other Nazi officials and their families. She raised their 4 children and was seen as the perfect SS wife. She believed he was protecting Germany from its enemies, not realizing or not wanting to admit what that truly meant for millions of innocent people. But everything changed in 1942. Reinhard Heydrich had been appointed as the acting governor of Bohemia and Moravia, the Czech territories under Nazi rule. He ruled with cruelty, sending countless people to concentration camps. On May 27, 1942, Czech resistance fighters carried out a bold attack on his car in Prague. Heydrich was seriously injured and died of his wounds a week later, on June 4, 1942. Hitler ordered a brutal retaliation. The village of Lidice was wiped out completely. Men were shot, women were sent to camps, and children were taken away. It was one of the most infamous massacres of the war. For Lina, her husband's death brought both grief and honor. She was 31 years old and left with 4 young children. The Nazi government treated her like a hero's widow, giving her money, medals, and land as a reward for her husband's service. But when the war started to fall apart in 1944 and 1945, that protection began to disappear. As Soviet and Allied forces advanced, many Nazi widows were left on their own. In the last days of the war, Lina fled with her children back to her family's home on Fehmarn Island, hoping to escape the chaos. She knew that when Germany lost, being the widow of Reinhard Heydrich would make her a target for hatred. In May 1945, after Germany's surrender, she was arrested by Allied forces. Like many Nazi family members, she went through the denazification process, where people were questioned about their role in supporting the regime. Lina claimed she had no idea what her husband had done, saying she only cared for her family. But many people doubted her. They believed she had enjoyed the privileges of power and had chosen to look away from the truth. After being released, Lina lived quietly on Fehmarn. She opened a small guest house to earn a living and focused on raising her children. She stayed away from public attention and rarely spoke about her husband's crimes. Even decades later, she defended his memory, calling him a good man who loved his country. Those words shocked many who knew what Reinhard Heydrich had done. Lina Heydrich lived until 1985, dying at the age of 74. She survived the war, but she never escaped her past. The name Heydrich remained one of the most hated in history. Her life became a symbol of how deeply the Nazi system had trapped not just soldiers and leaders, but also their families. Another wife from the top circle of the Nazi regime would also see everything she loved destroyed. Emmy Sonnemann was once one of Germany's most admired actresses. She had a successful career on stage, known for her beauty and charm. But her life changed completely when she met Hermann Göring, one of the most powerful men in Adolf Hitler's inner circle, and the head of the German Air Force. Their wedding in 1935 was a national event, broadcast across the country and attended by Hitler himself. For many Germans, it looked like a fairy tale. The actress marrying the war hero. Emmy quickly became known as the First Lady of the Reich. She enjoyed a life of luxury and influence. Her husband built her a grand estate called Karinhall, named after his first wife, Karin. The mansion was filled with rare art, gold furniture, and treasures taken from across Europe during the war, including many stolen from Jewish families who had lost everything. Emmy often hosted lavish parties there, surrounded by generals, artists, and politicians. To the outside world, she seemed to have everything: beauty, power, and wealth. But behind all the glamour, the foundations of her world were slowly collapsing. By 1944, Göring's Air Force, once feared across Europe, was being crushed by Allied bombers. The man who was once Hitler's most trusted ally had now become one of his greatest disappointments. Hitler accused Göring of failing the Reich and even of betrayal. As Allied troops advanced deeper into Germany, Emmy's luxurious life fell apart. Karinhall was destroyed. Her priceless art and jewelry were seized, and her husband was captured by American forces. The woman once treated like royalty was now homeless and powerless. Hermann Göring faced trial at Nuremberg for war crimes, accused of mass murder and exploitation. The world watched as he tried to defend the regime he helped build. But before he could be executed, Göring took a cyanide pill in his cell in 1946, ending his life and leaving Emmy completely alone. After the war, Emmy was imprisoned for a short time by Allied authorities and stripped of nearly all her property. When she was released, she had to live quietly, far from the world of fame and luxury she once knew. She settled in Munich, living a modest life, rarely speaking about the past. The once celebrated First Lady of the Reich became just another face in the crowd. Emily Göring died in 1973 at the age of 80, forgotten by most and remembered by few. Her life shows how quickly power can disappear. But one last wife's story would stretch on for decades, far beyond the war. It was Ilse Hess. Ilse Prühl met Rudolf Hess in the early 1920s when Germany was struggling after World War I. The country was poor, angry, and full of political chaos. Rudolf was already deeply involved in Hitler's growing movement, believing that the Nazi Party could restore Germany's power and pride. Ilse admired his dedication and shared many of his beliefs. They married in 1927, long before the Nazis gained control. And for a time, their life seemed simple and hopeful. As the Nazi Party rose to power, Rudolf's position grew stronger. He became one of Hitler's closest and most trusted men, eventually being named Deputy Führer of Germany. For Ilse, this meant both pride and pressure. She lived in comfort, but always in her husband's shadow, expected to be loyal, quiet, and supportive. She believed in his mission and thought his work would bring peace and stability to their country. But everything changed in May 1941. Without telling anyone, not even Hitler, Rudolf Hess took off in a small plane and flew alone to Scotland. His goal was to negotiate peace with Britain, a decision that shocked the entire Nazi leadership. Instead of being welcomed, he was captured by British authorities and imprisoned. To Hitler, this was an act of betrayal and madness. Overnight, Rudolf Hess went from being one of the most powerful men in Germany to a forgotten prisoner. For Ilse, life became painfully lonely. She was left behind with their young son, Wolf Rudiger, living under constant surveillance. Neighbors avoided her, and she was watched by Nazi officials and later by Allied forces. She had no power, no influence, and no idea if she would ever see her husband again. but despite everything, Ilse never gave up on him. After Germany's defeat, Rudolf Hess was put on trial at Nuremberg. He claimed to have acted alone for peace, but the court sentenced him to life in prison. Ilse continued to write him letters for decades, even when her messages were heavily censored or ignored. She was one of the few people who still visited him in Spandau prison in Berlin, where he spent over 40 years behind bars. Many Germans wanted to move on from the Nazi past, but Ilse refused. She believed her husband was misunderstood and unjustly punished. Her loyalty never faded, even when it made her an outsider in post-war Germany. Rudolf Hess died in 1987 in Spandau prison, officially ruled a suicide, though Ilse and others doubted that story. After his death, she lived quietly, rarely speaking about her past. She died in 1995 at the age of 95, still believing in her husband's innocence and still waiting for the peace he had once risked everything to find. By May 1945, the war was over. Germany was destroyed. Cities were in ruins. Millions were dead, and the men who had led the Nazi regime were gone. But the wives they left behind told the world another side of the story, the human cost of blind loyalty. Each story is different, but all share the same ending of destruction. When Allied soldiers walked through Berlin, they saw the remains of that world: burned furniture, broken toys, and family photos covered in dust. For many of these women, death seemed easier than facing the truth. For those who survived, life after the war was a long punishment.